Ever since humans first walked the earth, we have nurtured a desire to know what lies beyond the realm of our own existence. We have always been driven by a curiosity about forces and powers greater than ourselves. This propelled us on a journey. Initially steeped in myth and legend, it was ultimately defined by a profound religious conviction. In our quest for the divine, we have gathered an array of accoutrements. They sustain us in our search, serving us in times of worship, imbuing us with a sense of closer proximity to God. Of all the items that have accompanied us on our theological wanderings through the eons, from dense primeval forest to towering cathedral, temple and mosque, none have played so valued a role as this small object, the sacred bead. It is found in infinite forms in every culture and civilization, eternally uniting the entire world on a string. You find it in the most unexpected places, serving the most unusual functions. It is the noble little bead, a constant companion of humans since time immemorial. Long ago, before the advent of recorded history, it was designated a sanctified place in our quest for the divine. In nearly every religion of the world, it is there, a tiny thing, fulfilling a great need, the sacred bead. Arising in the Middle East 2 centuries ago, Christianity is the world's predominant religion. It has over 2 billion adherents, about a third of the Earth's population. Countless versions of this great faith exist across the globe, taking physical form in enduring structures and symbols. Christianity has added immeasurable riches to the tapestry of human culture. Born of a profound belief, the religion expresses itself in soaring cathedrals and even in the tiniest of objects. This is Christianity at its smallest and most portable level, the rosary. It is a string of beads that encapsulates the very essence of the faith for millions of its followers. Many religions hold the rosary sacred, but the one most familiar to the West is the rosary of the Roman Catholic Church. These noble little orbs represent all that is revered by Catholics. Comprised of beads made from a wide variety of materials, the rosary is a precious thing, forever treasured by its owner. Many of them are works of art, embodying beads of extraordinary beauty. The very word bead is derived from the Sanskrit word Buddh, meaning self-realization. It also stems from the old Anglo-Saxon words bidden, to pray, and from bead, meaning prayer. Christianity was the last great religion to adopt the rosary. The origin of this little string stretches back into ancient times. Some historians trace its beginnings to 9th century Ireland. At that time, the 150 Psalms of David that appear in the Holy Bible were the most important of the monastic prayers. Many laymen also recited them, but few outside the monasteries could read or count. The Irish monks suggested simple methods for counting prayers. Beginning with bags of pebbles, the idea metamorphosed into 150 knots on a string, a sure way for keeping track of the number of prayers that were said. The story of the evolution of the rosary is also deeply embedded in the turbulent history of Spain. Christianity became the official religion here in 589 AD. In the 8th century, the Visigoth-ruled nation was invaded by conquerors from Africa and Arabia. They were the Moors, who brought not Islam Islam to the Iberian Peninsula, but strings of prayer beads called Tasbihs. Though subdued by their conquerors, local Catholic monks were intrigued by the beads. When the Crusades to oust Islam from Jerusalem thundered across the Holy Land between the 11th and 13th centuries, French and English religious warriors also encountered the Tasbih of the Muslims. Inspired by the little strings of beads, Catholics devised their own version of it. And so, the rosary was born. Monks throughout medieval Europe began making rosaries for local worshippers. It was a time of austerity. The wearing of jewelry was frowned upon by the church. Bodily adornment was regarded as a form of ostentation and indulgence. The rosary was welcomed by the multitudes. By carrying it, they were not infringing on church doctrine, as prayer beads were permissible. Few were literate. For those who could neither read nor write, the little spheres on a string were a perfect way for keeping an account of prayers. Far more important than its intrinsic beauty, counting prayers became the primary function of the rosary. In 1569, Pope St. Pius V officially decreed the rosary's permanent place in the Catholic Church. According to the 16th century Spanish reformer, Saint Teresa of Avila, the rosary is a string that acts like a cosmic chain, tugging at heaven and bringing it down to earth. All over the world, what is known as praying the rosary is a ritual fundamental to Catholics. From mighty cathedrals to humble abodes, the devout use the rosary as their personal link to God. In some places, such as here in Orense in northwestern Spain, where churches are distant and transportation hard to come by, people like Antonina Fernandez rely on a daily local radio station to bring the rosary service into their lives. Fingering her rosary, Antonina Fernandez contemplates on one of what is known as the mysteries. There are 4 sets of mysteries. Each recalls various events in the life, death, and resurrection of Christ, and of his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Every mystery has 5 distinct sections, with beads indicating precisely where each one is to be meditated. These include the joyful mysteries, proclaiming the creation and birth of Christ; the glorious mysteries, highlighting Christ's redemption, including his rising after the crucifixion; and the sorrowful mysteries. Once every year during Easter, the sorrowful mysteries are brought to life in a passion play in the streets of Tepic, Mexico. Here, Christ's agonizing journey from the Garden of Gethsemane to the place of crucifixion is vividly portrayed, with the entire town taking part in the recreation. The people of Tepic are deeply committed to their faith, and all are moved by the profound nature of the event. Five new mysteries for reciting over the Rosary were added by Pope John Paul II in 2002. These are the first new meditations to be added in more than 500 years. Called the Luminous Mysteries, they shed light on Christ's public life, including his baptism, the performing of miracles, his transfiguration, and the institution of the Eucharist, in which Catholics celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion. Holy Communion, in which the body and the life of Christ is represented by bread and wine. It is a sacred ritual practiced by many Catholics every day, forging an ongoing bond with the Mother Church in the Vatican. John Paul II was one of the most beloved of popes. A visionary who traveled more extensively than any leader of the Catholic Church before him, he will long be remembered by his flock. At his funeral in 2005, a very precious object lay across his chest: the Holy Father's personal rosary. The little string of beads had been at his side throughout his life, and now accompanied him to his final resting place. The most personal of possessions, the rosary offers hope to those in need. In the great conflicts that have stained the story of humanity, the rosary was often carried onto the battlefield, clutched by those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Rosaries are made from various materials, including wood, coral, olive pits, precious stones, pearls, glass, and nowadays, even plastic. The word rosary comes from the Latin rosarium, meaning rose garden. According to tradition, this alludes to paradise, or to the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis. One of the most prized commodities used for making these lovely strings of beads is also one of the most unusual. Tucked away in the green folds of the hills of northern Kentucky lies a special place. This is the Abbey of Gethsemane, a Trappist monk community established in 1848. The monks trace their roots back to the Cistercian order, founded in France in the year 1098. In the 19th century, an immigrant group eager to establish a new center of monastic life dedicated to serving Christ and the community came to the shores of the New World. They settled in these hills and built their abbey. Today, 66 monks and novices call Gethsemane home. Theirs is a Spartan and ascetic lifestyle. Humility and introspection define the affairs of the day. In a remote corner of the grounds, there is a simple and quiet place. Here, those seeking solace and silence can meditate on the rosary in privacy. Communal prayers begin long before dawn and conclude with a service at 7:30 each evening. Yet, the modern world is not kept at bay. The monks support themselves by making fine cheese, baked goods, and confectionery, highly prized by connoisseurs all across the United States. But something even more valuable is made here. The raw material for it comes from one of nature's most perfect creations, the rose.
I love the rosary, and I've said it for many years. And when I heard that you could use rose petals to make rosaries with, I decided I would like to do that. And so I learned how to do that. Roses, of course, have such a deep symbolic meaning, and especially in the Catholic Church, we believe our Blessed Mother. It has a meaning, and she's the rose, the queen, all these different titles, and many of them do relate to love. And when a man falls in love with a woman, or vice versa, usually flowers are the token or the sign of love. And so roses are something that has grown. You can integrate it into your life of prayer. And it's almost like body and soul, in a sense. Very meaningful.
In keeping with an ancient tradition, Brother René Ritchie and his companions produce rosaries from the delicate petals of the bloom.
The rose is the only flower known that can be ground and made into beads. What I'm doing is grinding roses. There is no ingredient added beside the rose petal itself.
The process is elegant in its sheer simplicity. Paste from the crushed roses is rolled into small, round spheres. A hole is pierced into each little orb to prepare it for its role as a bead. The delicate pieces are set aside to dry for a few days. As moisture evaporates, the little balls harden. Now for the final phase. Linked together by carefully crafted handmade chains, what were once rose petals have become something new and enduring. A rosary.
There's a great demand for them today because of the fact that they are so close to the earth in being a flower, a living plant. We have begun to sell some of the rose petal rosaries that we make.
It does smell like roses. It does smell wonderful.
Gethsemane's monks also produce rosaries from the seeds of a tall roadside grass, originally native to Asia. Now grown all over the world, the droplet-shaped seeds have a natural hole through the center and are ready for stringing. Known as Job's tears, they are named for the extremely pious man in the Old Testament of the Bible who endured great suffering.
Sorrow and tears are basically all intertwined in the mysteries of the Rosary. Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
After a busy day, Brother Rene Ritchie conducts a service for praying the Rosary. The Rosary has a single strand of 6 beads with a crucifix at the end. This strand is attached to a continuous loop of 150, equal to the number of Psalms in the Bible. The first 6 beads mark where the worshipper utters the Apostles' Creed, followed by the Lord's Prayer, familiar to almost everyone in the Western world.
Give us this day our daily bread.
The prayer contains the immortal words, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
And lead us not into temptation.
It is recited for a total of 7 times while praying on the Rosary.
Let us pray for the gift of faith.
Prior to the Rosary's growth in popularity, it was simply known as a Pater Noster, Latin for Our Father.
And blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
For all Catholics, the Rosary provides a symbolic link with the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus.
And blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Before moving on to the circular string of beads, 3 times the worshipper recites the well-known pronouncement, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Holy Mary, Mother of God,
Finally, a Glory Be is spoken. This famous prayer contains the words, Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Then the fingers move on to the continuous circular thread. This is divided into 15 so-called decades, each one comprising 10 beads. The smallest beads are referred to as Hail Marys. As they are fingered one by one, the worshipper acknowledges the Virgin Mary as the Mother of Christ.
She has encouraged and begged people to pray the Rosary, and it is her gift to the world, really. And she has promised that God will bless those who pray the Rosary. When you're praying the Rosary, you're immersed in the life of Christ, and you're using words that come from Scripture. And so when you have Scripture in your heart, you have God in your heart.
The Eastern Orthodox or Greek Orthodox Church also reveres the Rosary, but of a different sort. Instead of beads, the string consists of a series of knots known as a metanoia, komboskini, or a kombologion. It is used for reciting what is commonly referred to as the Jesus Prayer. These priests are conducting a service in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. They often pray on the kombologion 100 times a day. Wherever Eastern Orthodox worshippers gather, the kombologion will be found. But over the years, the sacred string has made the leap from religion to the mainstream of daily life. In its transition to an object found everywhere, the string has gathered beads. Now, it is referred to as a komboloi, or more endearingly, as worry beads. It is found throughout the Greek-speaking world, such as here on the island of Corfu. To these folks, the komboloi is inseparable from their everyday activities. Twirling it to ward off worry or depression, or merely because of the soothing effect the smooth little spheres exert, the beads are the constant companions of many. The little strings are integrally woven into the great journey of life itself, a much prized partner, invariably handed down from father to son, and nowadays, even from mother to daughter. Be it a komboloi to still the nerves and calm the soul, or a rosary for invoking the holy name of God, these deeply revered objects are fashioned from a wide range of material. But of all the treasures yielded up by nature or conjured by the hand of man, the substance most often used stems from the heart of medieval Europe. Prague, once the capital of Bohemia. During the golden age of this magnificent city, Bohemia was one of the leading glass-making centers of the world. To fashion works of art like this, glassmakers needed intense heat to fuel their furnaces, and Bohemian forests supplied an abundant source of timber for the purpose. As rosaries became popular, artists saw a new use for glass, and so the transition was made from stained glass window to bead. North of Prague lies the town of Jablonek nad Nisou, formerly known as Gablons. For centuries, glass beads poured from factories here. Glassmaking is an industry vital to the region, even now. Glass made mass production possible. Making identical beads required an innovative process. Rods of molten glass are cut into sections and then stamped into shape by molds. The technique is known as pressed beads and has changed little over 5 centuries. Miloslav Schlosek is a representative of a local glass bead-making cooperative. It markets the products from a number of factories. Glass rosaries were revolutionary. They replaced sources from which earlier rosaries were made. This included precious stones, wood, bone, pearls, and seeds. Once natural material could be emulated, rosaries became more affordable, putting them into the hands of all those seeking an object that acted as a link to the divine. In addition to the rosary of the church, Jablonek glassmakers produce another much beloved sacred bead, the supha, or what is more commonly known as the Tasbih. These prayer beads serve the more than 1 billion followers of another great faith spread across the globe, Islam. In northern India, Islam proudly proclaims itself in mosques, minarets, and madrasas. landscape in the state of Uttar Pradesh is rich in Islamic influence. The fabulous Taj Mahal in Agra reflects the adoration of the Muslim emperor Shah Jahan for his deceased wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died in 1631. The monument has become the enduring icon of the Indian subcontinent.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
In the nearby town of Agra, the faithful gather in prayer in the Jama Masjid, or Great Mosque. In accordance with Islamic requirement, the prayers known as Salat are repeated 5 times daily.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
The word Islam means surrender or submission, and Muslim is loosely translated as one who submits. Adherence to what is known as the 5 pillars of Islam is the duty of all the devout. This entails faith in God, or Allah, observing the 5 daily prayers, practicing zakat or charity, fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, and undertaking a Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in one's lifetime. In the town of Fatehpur Sikri, once the capital of the Mughal Empire in the 16th century, the Imam or religious leader of the local mosque recites passages from the Quran, Islam's holy book. Anyone able to commit the entire Quran to memory is accorded the distinguished title Hafiz as a token of respect. With the Imam is a familiar and beloved item, his Tasbih prayer beads. Some Tasbihs consist of 99 beads, one representing each of the sacred names or attributes of Allah. Smaller Tasbih strings have only 33 beads, in which case the worshipper will meditate on them 3 times. Fingering the Tasbih connects the owner directly with the omniscient Allah. Founded by the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century, Islam is the world's most rapidly spreading religion. Children are taught the principles of the faith from an early age at madrasas or religious schools like this one in Fatehpur Sikri. Some Muslims have taken their faith to another level. They have adopted a life of intense introspection, exploring the profound mystical depths of Islam. They are known as Sufis. This master Sufi, bedecked in his prayer beads, blesses a fellow Muslim near a cemetery in the old quarter of Agra. Within a decade of the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 AD, Islam had advanced throughout the Iberian Peninsula. A century later, it was firmly established from Spain to the borders of China. This was its golden age, when it bequeathed unto the world an unparalleled legacy of science, literature, art, mathematics, and philosophy. Today, Islam and the Tasbih link Muslims across the continents of the globe. Like the komboloi of the Greeks, over the centuries, the Tasbih eventually transcended the precinct of mosque, becoming secularized and an integral part of daily life. Some people have taken to referring to tasbihs as worry beads. But to a devout Muslim like Abed Omar, who maintains a store in the souk or bazaar of Old Jerusalem, its symbolism and role run deep indeed.
We have here now a very beautiful old worry beads. It used to be my grandfather one. And my grandfather gave it to my father, and now my father gave it to me. And I'm very proud of it. I really like it. And I take care so much about it. But I think it's really unique piece, special piece. I have them since 5 years now. I use them only in special days, like parties, you know, like weddings, something like this. I take it and I pray with it. And everybody asks me to touch it. Even I let them touch it, but still in my hand. I'm afraid to give it to them, you know. It's a very old one. And I really like it. And my grandfather, he asked my father to take care about it. And now my father asked me to take care about it. And in the future, I'll ask my son to take care about it. You know, it's good for your nerves, you know, for your nerves. Good to use it, especially in the left hand. You know why? It's very close to the heart. When you make it the left hand, you know, the heart work very normal. This is very important to know. Not so much people know it, but it's nice to know when you do worry a bead in your hand. So when you just make it like this and you're very relaxing, you know what I mean? You take big breath like this, you really enjoy it and just go far with yourself. You feel something interesting, especially if you are alone. You know what I mean? In the shadow, alone. Let's say in the middle of the night, sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night, we pray, we'll be so close with God. We like this very much. So if you are just so close with God, lonely, nobody. Ala,
Like the fiery orb of the sun, the bead has lit the way for those seeking a spiritual path for thousands of years. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in the land that is home to the world's oldest faith. Dawn in the holy city of Varanasi, India. This is the river Ganges, lifeblood of Hinduism. Hinduism has over 800 million followers worldwide. But the history of this colorful and complex religion is shrouded in mystery. Archaeological evidence in the Punjab and Indus Valley provides rare clues, pushing its origins back more than 3,500 years BC. In the distant past, migrating Aryan tribes from Central Asia met the people of the Harappan civilization, fusing to fashion a culture and a belief system rich in a pantheon of deities. At its core, Hinduism is founded on the conviction that all beings, human and animal, undergo a series of births and rebirths, or reincarnations. This eventually leads to moksha, or spiritual salvation, freeing the soul from the cycle of births. What determines that is called karma, or the law of cause and effect. This is dependent on the simple process of how one lives one's life, virtuously and moral, or sinfully and corrupt. Bathing in the sacred waters of the Ganges is the aim of many Hindus. Its purifying waters replenish, revitalize, renew. The river also absorbs and absolves. When death comes, Hindus regard it as a sublime privilege to have loved ones cremated here. The waters carry the dust and ashes of the body away, while taking the departed soul to the realm of moksha. As another busy day gets underway, weddings are performed alongside funerals. For to a Hindu, all facets of life and death are intertwined. Pilgrims come in droves, bathing in the mother of all rivers, sanctifying their desire for upliftment and purification. Everywhere is the bead, a physical object that provides a dynamic link with higher realms. In this exotic part of the world, a string of sacred prayer beads is known as a mala. It comes from the Sanskrit word meaning rose or garland. As such, there is an affinity with the prayer beads of the Hindus and the sacred strings of Catholicism and Islam. Though Hinduism predates those religions by millennia, the spiritual connection is unmistakable. While it has often been said that for every Hindu there is a unique version of Hinduism, there are two primary branches of this very profound faith, a pathway that imposes little doctrine or dogma on those who follow it, but requires a life that coexists with the world in a spirit of mercy and compassion. Known as ahimsa or non-violence, this credo lies at the very core of the faith. One of Hinduism's branches is devoted to the god Shiva and goes by the name Shaivism. The other path follows the god Vishnu and is called Vishnuism. Both acknowledge the supremacy of Brahma as the principal deity in a trinity that holds sway over a host of lesser gods. Contrary to some misunderstanding by non-Hindus, these are neither idols nor graven images, but representations of the many facets or qualities of one unknowable cosmic force, far beyond the reach of human perception. Both schools also hold ancient texts known as the Vedas to be sacred scriptures. Hindus who follow Shiva usually carry strings of malas containing between 32 and 108 beads. The adherents of Vishnu carry strands exclusively of 108 beads. The quantity is steeped in mystical significance. It is related to the number of signs in the zodiac, 12. It is also connected with the number of planets in the solar system, 9. Conspicuously, 12 times 9 equals 108. There are also said to be 108 earthly desires in mortal man and 108 delusions that lurk in the human mind. The Sanskrit alphabet consists of 54 letters, each with two aspects, masculine and feminine. 2 times 54 equals 108. The connotations are limitless, reflecting on the diameters of the sun and the moon, the longitudinal and latitudinal geographic meanderings of the Ganges River, the stages of development of the soul, and even the energy force fields that are believed to flow through the human body. Many malas are made from rudrakshas. These are the seed of a rare tree that grows primarily on the island of Java in Indonesia. Popular mythology holds that the rudraksha tree sprang into being from Lord Shiva's teardrops, so the seed is often referred to as a teardrop bead. A rudraksha is expensive. While the surface texture is rough, the most valued examples have 5 or more distinct sections or features. Each of these are said to be associated with one of the essences of the Supreme Being. The popularity of the Rudraksha is not confined to India. Skirted by the Himalayas is the Kingdom of Nepal. Hinduism unfolds here in an eclectic way, unique to the region. In the capital city of Kathmandu, the Rudraksha is worn by the devout on all levels of society. In their quest for enlightenment, ascetic men known as sadhus withdraw from worldly affairs. They live frugally. Often, their only possessions are their begging bowls, their simple garments, and strings of sacred Rudraksha beads. Following a pathway to spiritual fulfillment, they rely on charity to support their basic needs. For most Hindus, offering these righteous believers a simple meal of rice is not a duty, but an honor. It is believed that beads made from organic material connect the wearer to the earth, forming a link with the creative force behind life itself. The marketplace of Kinari in India's bustling city of New Delhi offers every conceivable variety. Pearl and coral malas are said to have potent healing properties. Protection against evil and misfortune can be summoned from malas made from nature's abundant treasure chest. And so, like the cycle of lives that underpin the way of the Hindu, another day draws to a close on the banks of the Ganges. Now, it is time to cast offerings of prayers on the sacred waters and to praise the gods. Mysterious, eternal, intoxicating in its diversity, India was also the cradle of another great spiritual path, Buddhism. It all began here, at a place called Sarnath. After years of introspection, a man who was born in Nepal with the name of Siddhartha Gautama in the 6th century BC transcended to a state of enlightenment. He then became known as Gautama, Buddha. Buddha is a Sanskrit word meaning the awakened one. Buddha preached his first sermon here, setting in motion the process that led to the development of Buddhism. Today, it has almost 400 million followers worldwide. Buddhism rests upon the creed that there is suffering in the world, but that there are 8 ways to redemption from it. This process of liberation is known as nirvana. Prayers, meditation, chanting, and the practice of merciful and empathetic deeds are the basic tools for achieving a life of bliss and harmony, and for breaking the cycle of rebirths brought about by karma. Among the artifacts of the devout is the perennial bead. Buddhist prayer beads are also called malas. As in Hinduism, there are usually 108 beads on a string. Buddhism is now the defining religion of much of the Asian continent. This is the Shwedagon Pagoda near Yangon in Myanmar, the land once known as Burma. The gold-plated structure, soaring 326 feet, is part of an ancient complex that is believed to have been constructed some 2,500 years ago. The remarkable structure is not only the largest house of prayer in Southeast Asia, but a shrine, for kept within it are hairs taken from the very head of Buddha himself. Malas are integral to the daily meditations uttered here. The number of prayers or mantras are counted while fingering the beads. One of the most widely used of all mantras in Buddhism is the Tibetan prayer Om Mani Padme Hum. Loosely translated, it means "Hail to the jewel of the lotus." According to the Dalai Lama, the purpose of reciting these words is to transform an impure body and mind into an elevated and exalted state. Those who strive for enlightenment are known as bodhisattvas. To cater to an unquenchable demand for malas, cottage industries flourish. Children assist in the task of production in backyards throughout Southeast Asia. Wood is the most commonly used raw material. After cutting, shaping and drilling, the beads are sorted by hand. Polishing brings out the bead's natural sheen. Some undergo a final process in which they are dyed and then laid out to dry in the sun. Wearing a mala around the wrist is a constant reminder the time to meditate and to pray is just as important as it is to enjoy a cheroot or to chew on some betel nuts, a mild narcotic popular throughout the subcontinent. Wearing malas is also a means to get noticed. People flaunt them proudly. The more flamboyant the beads, the more the wearer will be admired and feel empowered. Malas are displayed in every shape and size. They're made from many raw materials, each serving a different purpose. Ensuring that prayers will be answered and desires met creates a difficult choice for the buyer. Here in Vietnam, the festival of Tet, or the New Year, is a major event. A perfect way to celebrate it is to take a boat trip up the perfumed river to Chua Huang, the fabled perfume pagoda. This complex of Buddhist temples is built into limestone cliffs on what the locals call the Mountains of the Fragrant Traces. As a New Year offering, money is burnt in a special cauldron. It is believed the smoke will carry the hopes and aspirations of the worshipper to heaven and beyond. As anyone can reach the highest level of spiritual refinement, in Vietnam, Buddha sometimes takes a female form. This figure usually represents the essence of nurturing and maternal grace. Here, the matronly Buddha is adorned in beads. She has reached nirvana, radiating wisdom for those who seek a pathway to enlightenment. But some have lesser aspirations, seeking only domestic bliss, joy and happiness. For those, these colorful Buddhas will make for light-hearted talismans to adorn garden and home. To the west of Vietnam lies another exotic place, Thailand. In Bangkok, a Buddhist shrine is surrounded by traffic and feverish round-the-clock activity. Known as a Wat, it is a sedate sanctuary deep within the heart of this bustling city. Temple dancers welcome the new year. The performance occurs at the request of visitors. The dance is intended to herald in good fortune for the year ahead. Traditional attire reflects an ancient culture, proudly nurtured within a very modern world. On the other side of the city, vendors sell amulets in the form of miniature Buddhas. Many are very ornate and one-of-a-kind collector's pieces. The little talismans are worn as personal adornment on a daily basis. The craftsmanship is closely scrutinized by fastidious buyers. At a nearby temple, priests bless those who have just acquired a new talisman, fortifying the link between artifact and wearer. All over Bangkok, sacred beads offer a mantle of protection, even on the waterways that slice through this vast city. They grace temples and shrines, warding off evil and cementing a link with a benevolent and omnipotent presence. To the north of Thailand lies Laos, a lush and tropical land where 60% of the population practices Buddhism. There are many schools for the training of monks. These devout men are respected by society and depend entirely on charity and goodwill for their livelihood. In this remote temple, prayer flags and beads form a unique form of eulogy in remembrance of the dead. Buddhism in Nepal follows the Tibetan or Mahayana school. Meditating on the ways of the world is a daily ritual for these monks. Following tradition, their malas are made of strings of 108 beads. These prayer wheels are an extension of the beads on a mala. Instead of counting prayers, every time a worshipper spins one of the heavy wheels, it is tantamount to the reciting of a mantra, for inscribed on each ornate rotating drum are sacred words extolling the divine. Those faithful who follow a Tibetan path of Buddhism are never without their beads. From temple courtyard to back streets and alleyways, malas are constant companions, an outer manifestation of a deep and unshakable faith. In this part of the world, malas are sometimes made from very rare and to most Western eyes, even bizarre materials. One of the most cherished are bones. Some are carved from yak bones, others from horses or domestic animals. But the most prized of all come from none other than human skeletons.
This particular costume is a dance costume incorporating aprons and headdresses made out of human bone. in Tibetan Buddhism. Death is only the flip side of life. Death is not a culmination. Death is a doorway into another dimension of being. And in order to navigate our way through death in the afterlife, we cannot have fear. If you look at the headdress, you see that the skulls are smiling, which is an indication that the bones are coming from a high initiate, and he is communicating to whoever is observing this costume not to be afraid of death, that death is conquered by enlightenment. I fear not death. Don't you see that I smile? Another aspect of bones is that bones contain the vital force of the individual, and costumes of this kind were made from the bones of very highly evolved lamas, and it was believed that the presence of their vital force would assure their continued communication with the world of the living and their participation in assisting the human community in its religious endeavors. This particular costume was made in the 19th century. It would have been worn by a lama, probably a high lama.
Contrary to the expectation of many in the Western world, Buddhism still thrives in the most populous country on earth, China. China's place in human history is legendary. Portions of its Great Wall date back to the 7th century BC. The total length of this unique fortification spans some 4,500 miles. This is a culture that has left an indelible impression in the form of art, science, literature, and medicine. Buddhism was first introduced to China during the Han Dynasty in the 2nd century AD. It became widespread during the 6th century, eventually surviving the Communist Revolution and the advent of reforms under Mao Zedong. All over China, malas are popular. Markets sell them in great profusion and in every shape and form. The Chinese gift for carving is evident in these superbly crafted pieces, made from every conceivable type of material, including seeds and fruit pips. Elaborate designs meet the needs of the most discerning customers. In northwestern Yunnan province lies Lijiang. Situated on a plateau 8,500 feet above sea level, the area was first settled in the 12th century. One of the most intact remnants of the China of old, today it is one of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. Lijiang is home to the Nashi people. Living very much in the mold of their ancestors, the Nashi nurture their ageless traditions. Agriculture is the lifeblood of the community. Many steep themselves in their heritage, learning ancient arts such as papermaking, calligraphy, and painting. The arts are integral to the life and soul of the Nashi. Traditional dance and drama reverberate on stages here every night. The Nashi are predominantly Buddhist. The mala can be found everywhere in this timeless corner of a vast and captivating land. Dali is another ancient city that has escaped the impact of time. Construction began here in 1683. The China of old is very much alive. The three pagodas of the Chongshen Monastery date back to the 9th century. Many Buddhas take a female form. Women from the Bai community, a minority group numbering about 2 million, often officiate at prayers and gatherings at temples. Hangzhou can trace its origins back 2,500 years. Its zenith came during the Tang dynasty, between 600 and 900 AD. For a time, this was one of the three capitals of the Xiu dynasty. The European explorer Marco Polo held a diplomatic position here from 1282 to 1285. Today, Hangzhou remains an important economic and cultural center and a place where Buddhism still thrives. Beijing's internationally recognized landmark, the Forbidden City. Home to 24 emperors over a period of 5 centuries, this World Heritage Site consists of 800 buildings containing 10,000 rooms. Construction began in 1406, requiring the labor of 200,000 men who toiled for a decade and a half. Its dominance came to an end in 1912 with the abdication of Pu Yi, China's last emperor. Within its walls, the mala occupies a special place. For China's royalty adapted the sacred beads for use as adornment at court. These surviving examples reflect the lavish lifestyle enjoyed by China's last great imperial rulers. Made of rare precious stones, they were worn only by nobility within the walls of the Forbidden City. Throughout the centuries of Asian splendor, powerful dynasties, and cultural riches, one object took precedence above all others. Neither a great temple nor an imposing palace, it was a small, portable commodity that was accorded a unique place in the story of this fascinating continent. This is a Z bead, one of the most valuable little objects in all the world. Its origins are lost in the distant mists of a very ancient time. One thing is known. The story of this bead reaches far back to Tibet. In Tibetan, the word Z means shining or splendor. According to legend, Z beads were gifts from heaven. They were said to have been bequeathed to humanity to serve as powerful amulets of protection. Usually made of agate, the beads are etched in strange, intricate designs, often in the form of eyes. But no one knows who made them or where they came from. The most valuable are countless centuries old and have been passed down as heirlooms through succeeding generations.
Z beads command thousands of dollars per bead, and so they attract the attention of very wealthy collectors and slightly indulgent people who like the idea of owning a small ornamental artifact that's worth many thousands of dollars. I believe the record price for a Z bead that was paid for a desirable nine-eyed Z bead just a few years ago was $35,000 for a single bead. And I've heard rumors that prices now go up to at least $50,000 for a single bead.
When you see the Z's, they have different kinds. This is the Z. It's the kind of Z, but it's called Chung Z, which has the stripes, and Z, which has the eyes. It has a circle and it's called I Z bead. This is with the 3 eyes. It's a little bit broken, but it is a real Z. It is in between 600 to 1,500 years old, and that technique is lost. Nobody knows how to make this. Taiwanese, they are still making those things, but it's totally different. So that's why these are expensive stones.
Z beads are valued not only by collectors, but by Buddhist priests. These mystical objects are accorded a special place in temples. There they are cherished as objects imbued with supernatural powers, linking them directly with the creative forces of the universe. Because Z beads fetch such high prices, a lucrative market in copying these ancient treasures has sprung into being. Z bead reproductions are often sold in marketplaces throughout Asia. The mysterious markings and designs, carefully imitated, are believed to bring good fortune to the wearer. They generate vast profits for those producing and distributing them. In historic Lijiang, where paper lanterns symbolically welcome another warm summer evening, tourists from all over China gather. While this vital nation energetically asserts itself on the economic frontier of world affairs. Elements from the past are not forgotten. In this thriving mecca of tourism, the Z bead is a popular item. Mystical remnants from ancient times, they are carefully studied and copied. Different patterns dazzle the eye. The beads will be used mainly for jewelry and proudly displayed by their owners. While emperors and palaces are no more in this multifaceted land, a passion for the Z bead is testimony to China's respect for its rich cultural heritage. Matters of magic and the supernatural are not confined to the continent of Asia. Wherever people gather, there is a desire to reach out and grasp some essence of the divine, a yearning to make contact with forces often beyond the grasp of human understanding. This has given rise to many belief systems. Among them are metaphysical healing and methods for contacting ancestral spirits. This is the exclusive domain of the shaman. No place on earth is so steeped in mystery as this, Africa. Home to over 800 million people speaking well over 1,000 languages. This is a gigantic continent, often regarded by outsiders as bewildering, enticing, unfathomable. Tribal religious belief largely rests upon the concept of recognizing the omniscient role of the ancestors in the affairs of the living. This supplants worshipping a deity or a god, who is invariably seen as being beyond the reach or concept of mortals. As a result, Africa is rich in a compelling array of practices that embrace the sacred bead. Akinsanya Ola is from Nigeria. Every year he attends the annual Tucson Gem and Mineral Show in Arizona. His purpose is to promote the culture of his people, the Yoruba. Yoruban beadwork dates back to the 19th century when small glass beads were introduced to Africa by missionaries and explorers. Once these little spheres were adopted into the mainstream of daily life, everything was beaded, especially items that had spiritual significance. Beaded crowns were especially valued by kings and chiefs. Rulers, known as obas, were believed to have a divine mission on earth. Imbued with shamanistic powers, a monarch was often seen as a conduit to the world of the ancestors. In South Africa, shamanism has arisen anew. More popular and widespread than ever since the demise of apartheid and the subjugation of indigenous culture, shamans go by many names, including Sangoma or Ngoma. Shamans play an important role in society. They act as diviners or soothsayers. They serve as mediums, bringing messages from the ancestors. Equally important, they are a vital force in the field of healing. Now officially recognized by the government, they are accorded similar status to that of Western medical practitioners. Sangomas employ time-tested methods that reach back long before recorded history. After spending years of learning their techniques at the feet of a mentor, African shamans use self-induced states of trance, herbal remedies, and a variety of metaphysical practices to cure maladies and serve their patients. They can smell out evil spirits and identify the sources of illness and misfortune. Moses Shadow Dludlu is a Zulu. His university education in communication and media studies rekindled his respect for the shamanistic practices of those who came before him. He was officially inducted into the higher ranks of shamans. Today, he's a practicing Ngoma in Johannesburg, but often officiates at ceremonies such as this one in rural areas. The event is the initiation of a young woman into the role of a Sangoma. The place is a village in the province of Mpumalanga. The ceremony is long and complicated. Its principal function is to request that the ancestors accept the young woman as a mediator between the living and the dead, as a diviner foreseeing beyond what the normal eye perceives, and as a healer schooled in the use of traditional medicines and herbs. Dance and music are fundamental to the proceedings. Conspicuous throughout the long day's events, the sacred bead. For Shadow Dludlu, the bead is one of his most important tools. In his shamanic paradigm, color is of special significance. It is a physical manifestation of life-sustaining energies, energies that Shadow taps into during the course of his healing sessions.
But have red and blue. The red will be for the blood, is the essence of life, and the blue is for the eternity, the infinity. It's like the oceans, the sky, the unlimited nature of life. So the two colors on my neck, they say it's an unlimited source of power. And the white is the purity, the innocence, the reproduction of life, the source of life. For us to have red, we need the white. We need white semen. The fusion of the white semen also then leads to the red. Red is the blood that must constantly be reconditioned, renewed. Without blood, we don't have life. But other sangomas and other traditional healers will use different colors on their neckties. So basically, I would say the colors of the beads in my circumstance will be a sign, particularly around the neck, a sign of affiliation to the energy system, how I relate to the natural energy systems that informs or that helps in composing who am I. Sangoma also will definitely have red and white. And then the other colors, blue, black, green, black and green, red and white in one combinations and whatever, then that is now refining now down to specific needs of the energy systems in the body, for the energy systems that governs the continuous reproduction, the continuity of the life processes, particularly good health.
Yay! Yay!
As healers like Moses' shadowed Lulu look to the future, preserving ancient practices forged by their ancestors, they have a perennial tool to turn to: the sacred bead. It is a timeless object. It takes many forms, serving many purposes, the greatest being a link between the devout and the forces they recognize behind the cosmos. This is a tiny thing, yet eternal in its place in human affairs. It is the sacred bead that unites the entire world on a string